Hi, it's Kirby Summers. Today is Sunday, February the 2nd, and we are going to catch up with what's happening and what happened at Clive Davis's pre-gala party that he holds every single year. Yesterday, the 1st, was the 50th anniversary of these parties that he gives every single year. And he doubled down. He showed up in a gold lame jacket. So we're going to talk about that. But before I do, I want to thank several people for being kind enough to donate a super thanks to me. And that would be Stephen E., Barry S., and one more person, Lisa R. And these three people were kind enough to run on over to my website and do a one-time contribution, which allows me to skip the middle person, which would be this platform, who keeps about 40%. Then there's an intermediary who keeps about another 9-10%. But going to my website allows me to keep approximately 90%, which is very helpful. And obviously, basically allows me to keep doing these podcasts and working on these projects and doing these big reveals. Now, if you have not caught my podcast with Shaun Attwood, I'll leave a link below. I did a major deep dive on Clive Davis, commencing with the person responsible for creating him from his beginning. I included a lot of information also on Jay-Z and how he's connected to the people who created the tunnels under Hugh Hefner's mansion. I gave a lot of information. It was just shy of 2 hours. I took some questions from the audience. So if you haven't watched it, I'll leave the link below and you can go ahead and watch it. So one of the people who was at Clive Davis's party was Jennifer Lopez. Now we know that Jennifer Lopez has come under scrutiny for her, I mean, if you listen to some people, they say it was a pre-arranged, let's say, faux romantic relationship between her and Sean Diddy Combs that was sort of done for promotional reasons. And some people are in the camp of saying, well, no, they actually did have a relationship. Now, there seems to be no doubt that JLO has been brought into the thick of this. And some people clearly allege, based on the number of photographs and the number of people who have been apparently at these so-called parties. And by the way, when I was on Shaun Attwood's show, I described that these parties are not new, that in fact, Clive Davis had these parties, and they were just called something else at that time. So these parties are not new. Uh, they're a staple of the music industry and frankly of the entire Hollywood industry. And it seeps into other areas as well. So I'm going to just read a couple of the names of the people who attended his party. Now, the pre-Grammy gala was kind of like what he does every year is he selects a person and he says, oh, this is in salute to this person. And this year it was Jodie Gerson. And Jodie Gerson is the chairman and the CEO of Universal Music Publishing Group. She was born in 1961, and in 2015, she became the first female CEO of a major music publisher and the first chairwoman of a global music company. Now, this is clearly, if you have listened to a lot of my podcasts, you will know that the role of women is manipulated, and therefore it's important to have, let's say, somebody like Jodie Gerson in these positions because it continues the agenda. And now I'm not going to say too much about that. I'm just going to I will urge you to listen to some of my podcasts and or go and take a listen or re-listen to the show I did with Shaun the other day. So what was happening was that Davis was receiving a lot of criticism based on the fact that there were all these fires in California. I mean, California in a state of just one catastrophe after another regarding these ongoing fires. And so what he did in order to, I guess, make it look like, oh, well, he's not doing anything horrible, where some other companies and people said, hey, we're not having parties this year for the Grammys or anything like that because look at the catastrophe, look at the deaths, the loss of homes, all of this horrific stuff that's happening in California. Clive Davis, who in fact will be 93 in April, I believe April 4th, which is right around the corner. He's like, oh, well, you know what? We are going to have this pre-Grammy dinner and show, and we are turning it into a fundraising event for music cares, for quote, wildlife relief, to help the musicians who have been affected by the fire. However, if you do a dive into what Music Cares has contributed to musicians who have been in need of help, the amounts are minuscule. Like in one case, I saw that, oh, during the course of this period or this period, they spent 5 million. Now, for people who make 10 times, 20 times, 30 times that amount, that's like you and I giving $100 to a person in need. So I'm not impressed with what Music Cares does on a that's my personal opinion, but they decided, Davis's people decided, hey, we're just going to call this a fundraising event, which is what they did. Um, and so he had a lot of older people there, like Neil Sedaka, who is now 86 years old. He basically sat down at a baby grand piano and he played his old music. Now, a lot of the people of today wouldn't even know who Neil Sedaka is. And apparently he sang and he played Breaking Up Is Hard to Do, Laughter in the Rain, Solitaire, and they say that people sang along. I guess it would be the older crowd. Now, don't forget, Davis is almost 93. He's going to have people like Neil Sedaka, who at 86 is one of the entertainers that Clive Davis basically helped in his career. Joan Collins, somebody else who is she's in her mid 80s, I would think. She was at the party. Barry Manilow, I'm surprised he's still around. He was someone, of course, who was another person who Clive Davis helped back in the day. And, I think he would have been somebody who got his start as a backup singer to Patti LaBelle, if memory serves me. A Babyface was there, again, who got his start with Davis, but who went on to be in another label that I talked about, Interscope. Uh, there was a supermodel, Beverly Johnson. All of these people were like dressed to the nines. Now, not all of the outfits were great, but a lot of the outfits that the women in particular wore were very revealing. And like I said, Clive Davis wore a gold lame jacket. He could not have been any more flamboyant, let's say, than Liberace back in the day. Um, Candy Spelling was there, who is the mother of Tori Spelling. Now, that's a generational family of Hollywood. Tori Spelling, if you remember, had her own show at one time. And, it's like there are just a whole bunch of people. And let me just go back to the list of people who were there. Um, People whose name, well, Joni Mitchell, who again, she's very old, but she was sort of in that um 1960s with Bob Dylan scene where the music was in San Francisco and all of that stuff was happening with the LSD and the other, let's call them drugs, for lack of a better word. So, I mean, there were a lot of older people there. Let's see, who was young. Well, I'll say that John Stamos was there, but he's kind of middle-aged. Kathy Hilton and Richard Hilton were there. And these people, the Hiltons, are connected to Jeff, who I basically refer to as Epi. There were some other Epi people there. But Gayle King, by the way, was there. She has lost a lot of weight apparently for this party. And she posed with Michael Bublé. Um, Halle Berry attended. I mean, there were some people who were there. I think that the one that I personally thought was interesting was the fact that JLO was there. And the way she posed and the look on her face was anger. I saw anger, I saw defiance, but the fact that she attended this party says to me, and it should say to all of us, that despite what dirt has been shared amongst us regarding her behavior with Diddy, that she's fighting back and that she's not going to let go of what she has been able to get, despite the fact that it is now known, um, allegedly, that she did not sing a lot of her stuff while performing, and that a lot of the things that she took credit for were really things that belonged to other people, and other people were not given credit for this kind of stuff. Willow Smith, by the way, was at the party. And I mean, the actual Grammy Awards are today, Sunday, I believe at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And people will be, I guess, hanging in there. Um, oh, one more person, Nikki Haskell was there. Now, Nikki Haskell is pushing 90. However, those of you who read my work will know that name as being someone who, before Jeff became well known and before he even hooked up with, let's say, Ghislaine Maxwell, he, quote, air quotes, dated Nikki Haskell, who was then, I believe, 14 years his senior. And this was back in the mid 1980s, when I think it's around the time, I think it began sort of in 1986. And although mainstream narrative claims that Jeff did not meet Leslie Wexner until 1987 or 1988, they try to push it to. The fact is that he did meet him 1984 and 1985. And the reason I say that is because when there was an investigation into the unalivement of Wexner's attorney, um, Shapiro, that I believe most of you know about Arthur Shapiro at this point, who took 2 bullets to the head, mob style, again in 1985. The police investigation uh, came up with the fact that Epstein was, in fact, considered a person of interest in the unalivement of Arthur Shapiro. In fact, years later, Stephen Hoffenberg, who became let's say, a partner of Jeff, tried to get a deal when he was in jail. So he was put in jail for a number of years. Nothing happened to Jeff, as all of you know. However, what he tried to do was to try to make a deal once he was in jail to say, hey, I know who was responsible for, and there's actually a record of this, a legal record of Hoffenberg trying to tell prosecutors and trying to get, like, some time off his very long sentence. I believe he was given a 20-year sentence. He served 18 of those years, saying, hey, I can give you information about Arthur Shapiro's unalivement, which would have been Jeff, and nobody wanted the information. And so clearly Jeff has been protected. So the fact that Nikki Haskell showed up at Clive Davis's pre-gala party, which was again the 50th anniversary of these parties, where we know that during one of these, somehow our wonderful singer and beautiful person, Whitney Houston, was unalived, and he, meaning Clive, refused to have the paramedics remove her body while he partied on the ground floor, and she was 4 floors above at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in California. Everybody sees that now as some kind of sacrifice, right? And the way that I saw the fact that he was still having this party when all of this stuff with the fires were raging, I myself thought, well, you know what? It's kind of like in keeping with his character. Um, I uploaded additional information, by the way, guys, on my Substack, and I noticed that many of you have joined me, and I want to thank you for doing that. And I see that a lot of people there, I think I got another 1,000 followers here on YouTube after appearing on Shaun's show. Now, that wasn't my first appearance. I appeared several times during the Jeff investigation and during those days, and a lot of those uh, conversations had to be taken down because we know that Shaun Attwood's show is targeted, as all of us are, if we say something that the powers that be just don't like. They don't like their dirt to be told. So, not only do we have to be careful about what we say, uh, we have to also push back and try to keep control of the truth, because you're not going to find it in mainstream. So after being on the show the other day, I think there are another 1,000 people that are new to my channel. So I welcome you, and I encourage you to comment and or ask questions. And while I do not have the ability or the time to answer everything, every now and then I will be able to answer 1 or 2 questions. And I do make it a point to at least read what you guys have to say so that I know what your thoughts are, because, clearly we're in this together. So that said, I'm going to ask you to please give this a like. And if you haven't subscribed, do so, because this is where I share a lot of the stuff that sometimes I don't have time to write up and upload to my Substack and or my Patreon. All right, guys, have a good day. Bye.